Boots hammer a stone corridor as a field phone rattles on a table. Pencils freeze over a map as a door slams, and the room goes dead quiet. A flame flickers in the cold night on the outskirts of the operation, but it is not from enemy shelling. It is from the hands of a German Field Marshal. On a crude wooden table, the supply maps, the very nervous system of any military campaign, are turning to ash. Staff officers stand frozen, their breath caught in their throats as they witness what looks like madness, a betrayal, or perhaps a genius cutting off his own retreat to find a victory no one else could imagine. Have you ever looked in the mirror and seen deep wrinkles on your forehead, or felt your hands tremble when facing a decision that could change your life? That is the physical map of extreme stress when the system you have trusted suddenly collapses. In war, maps are faith, and burning them means discarding all conventional logic. I am about to reveal a secret that mainstream historians often overlook: why destroying every logistical resource was the only key for this general to defeat an army 5 times his size. Imagine being in a room thick with cigarette smoke and road dust. This general does not use empty slogans. He looks directly into the eyes of exhausted men with a gaze as calm and cold as Prussian steel. He knows the strongest weapon right now is not a shiny Tiger or Panther tank, but the liberation from the burden of false hope. When all supply lines are severed and the maps are burned, only one thing remains: the purest instinct for survival. They say that without logistics, you will die. But what if that is completely wrong? This question is for anyone feeling out of breath in the race of life, stuck in old pipes of thinking clogged by fear. This general did what 99% of people would consider suicide. In reality, he was executing the greatest emotional twist in history. He wasn't just burning paper, he was burning an obsolete system to create a new legend. This is not a dry history lecture. It is a work of behavioral psychology about how a human dares to walk into the dead land to find rebirth. After this, your own worldview will be transformed. You will understand why sometimes, to win the biggest battle of your life, the first thing you must do is burn the map you are clinging to. Prepare yourself, because I will show you exactly what invisible power that fire activated inside the human soul. Are you ready to decode this secret and escape the black hole of failure? The silence in the command bunker is heavy, like the air before a devastating storm. Outside, the horizon is a jagged line of smoke and steel, a visual map of a collapsing front. To understand why a man would burn his own supply lines, you first have to see the desperation through his eyes. By the winter of that year, the German Sixth Army wasn't just fighting an enemy, they were fighting a ghost, the ghost of a system that had promised them everything and delivered only frozen mud and empty magazines. Look at the faces of these men in the fading light. Their skin is sallow, their eyes sunken into deep hollows of exhaustion, the physical markers of a soul that has lost its belief in the chain of command. This is what I call the rust of the soul. Just as plaque silently chokes an artery until the heart stops, the reliance on a broken logistics chain had choked the spirit of these soldiers. They were tethered to a life raft of supplies that was actually a lead weight, dragging them into the depths. The field marshal stands at the center of this rot. He sees the wrinkles on the landscape, the clogged roads, the derailed trains, the burning depots. He realizes that his army has become like a clogged toilet, backed up with its own inability to move because they are waiting for a permission and a sandwich that will never arrive. They are paralyzed by a safety net that is made of nothing but lies and propaganda. He looks at the young officers, their hands trembling as they hold reports of 0 fuel and 0 ammunition. These aren't just numbers on a page. They are a death sentence written in the ink of bureaucracy. In this moment, the information gap between the reality on the ground and the orders from the Führer's bunker has become a vast, unbridgeable canyon. The soldiers are low-ho struggling in the dark, clinging to the hope that a miracle convoy will break through the blizzard. But the general knows the truth, that no one dares to speak. There is no convoy. The medicine they are waiting for is actually a poison of false hope that keeps them sedentary and vulnerable. So, he makes a choice that defies every military manual ever written. He decides to destroy the hope to save the man. He chooses to ignite the very maps that dictate their survival, forcing them to look away from the empty roads and into the eyes of the enemy standing directly in front of them. This is the controlled panic, the moment where you stop being a victim of the system and become a predator of the moment. He is about to turn his army into a vulnerable pimple that is ready to burst with a force the enemy cannot possibly predict. But before the first match is struck, he must face the most dangerous opponent of all, the pride of his own staff. The match is struck, and the flame dances in the general's eyes, a reflection of a man who has decided to trade a life raft of false security for the sharp edge of a sword. For years, these soldiers were told that their safety lay in the Atlantic wall of logistics, a system promised to be as solid as stone, but the general sees the rust and the clogged pipes eating it from within. He understands a truth that most mentors will never tell you. The very things that make you feel secure are often the cysts that keep you from moving toward victory. Look at the maps curling in the heat. These documents represent the old world, a world where wars were won by the thickness of a supply line. But this is the new world of chaos, where a clogged pipe of thinking leads directly to a dead land. The staff officers watch in horror, their pride and arrogance wounded by this act of defiance. They are struggling, paralyzed by the fear of being left behind by the rules they spent their lives learning. This is the information gap in its most brutal form. The corporal in Berlin is looking at a map of symbols and icons, believing that willpower can replace ammunition. But the general is looking at the wrinkles and age spots on his men's faces, the physical map of a human machine that is out of fuel. He knows that as long as they believe a miracle is coming down that road, they will remain sedentary, waiting like victims for a doctor who has no medicine. By burning these maps, he is performing a surgery on their psychology. He is removing the scabs of false hope that have made them weak. He is forcing them to realize that they are alone in the freezing dark, but in that loneliness, there is a terrifying power. It is the power of the predator, who no longer cares about the rules of the house, because the house is on fire. This general isn't just a soldier, he is a psychologist of the battlefield. He knows that once you discard the old habits of waiting for help, you are reborn into a force that acts with immediate urgency. The enemy expects a clogged artery of a defensive line, but they are about to face a flood of men who have nothing left to lose but their chains. He is about to show them that a vulnerable pimple can indeed become a death blow if it bursts at the exact right moment. The ash from the maps begins to settle, a grey snow falling over the ruins of 1,000 standard operating procedures. The general stands tall, his posture as rigid as a Prussian blade, unaffected by the shaking hands of the men around him. He is now activating the most dangerous phase of his strategy, the controlled shock. He looks at his division commanders, men who have spent decades polishing their pride and arrogance, and he sees the wrinkles of fear etched into their expressions. "You are waiting for the fuel trucks," he says, his voice a low calm cut through the freezing air. But those trucks are ghosts. They are vessels of false hope that have turned you into sedentary victims. He is using trigger language to strip away their layers of denial. He compares their current state to a clogged artery, stagnant, and waiting for a heart attack that is already in motion. By burning the maps, he has performed a psychological amputation, removing the diseased limb of dependency to save the body of the army. This is the information gap weaponized against his own side to force a rebirth. He knows that as long as there is a path on a piece of paper, the human brain will low-ho or struggle to find a way back to safety. By destroying the path, he has created a dead land behind them, a black hole that consumes any thought of retreat. "Look at your hands," he commands. "They are numb with cold because you are waiting for a heater that isn't coming. Now, pick up your rifles. Let the fire of survival be your only warmth." He is connecting their physical signs, their shivering, their exhaustion to a psychological truth, that they are no longer soldiers of the Reich, but predators of the frozen dark. He is building a counter-narrative to Hitler's miracle weapons. While the corporal in Berlin promises V-rockets and secret tanks, the general promises only the cold steel in their hands and the will to breathe. He is turning their vulnerability into a weapon of mass confusion. The enemy expects an army that is dying of thirst, but they are about to be struck by an army that has drunk the fire of its own desperation. The transition is complete, and the command post has become a sacred ground of absolute clarity. The general has moved past the anatomy of despair and into the predator's rebirth. He watches his men, and where he once saw sallow skin and the sunken eyes of exhaustion, he now sees the cold fire of survival. He is applying the scarcity principle of psychology. Because they have nothing left, no fuel, no maps, no roads. Back the value of the moment in front of them has become priceless and limitless. "Look into the dark," he whispers, his voice now a calm high point that commands the room. The enemy thinks they are besieging you. They think you are a clogged artery waiting to die. He uses vivid imagery to describe the enemy's overconfidence, calling it a vulnerable pimple of arrogance that is about to be lanced. He is visualizing the consequences of their enemy's pride, turning the fear of the unknown into a weapon of surprise. By burning the maps, he has removed the information gap that allowed them to struggle with doubt. There is no longer a what if on a piece of paper. There is only the how of the strike. He has successfully moved them from thought to action. They are no longer victims of a failed life raft of logistics. They have become the flood that will drown the enemy's certainty. Every one of you is now a savior of your own fate, he tells them, using empowering language to rebuild their dignity. He is connecting their physical presence, the cold steel of their rifles, the steam of their breath, to the rebirth of an elite force. He is reading the hearts of these men, acknowledging their pain, but promising them a victory that destroys the rules. This is the tipping point where the clogged pipe of a retreating army becomes the sharpened blade of an offensive strike. The enemy's wall of certainty is about to face a twist that no military academy could ever teach. He is about to launch a counterattack not based on supplies, but on the pure, unadulterated willpower of men who have been freed from the map. The clock on the wall of the bunker stops, its rhythmic ticking replaced by the heavy, synchronized breathing of men who have accepted their fate. This is the controlled shock in action. The general steps out into the snow, his eyes scanning the horizon not for a path, but for the vulnerable pimple in the enemy's overstretched line. He is applying the information gap in reverse. The enemy's maps show a dying, immobile unit, but the reality is a sharpened blade moving through the dead land. Observe the enemy, he commands, his voice as sharp as Prussian steel. They are sedentary victims of their own success, waiting for their own logistics life raft to move forward. He is using trigger language to flip the narrative of power. He describes the enemy's massive supply depots not as an advantage, but as a clogged artery of bureaucracy that makes them slow and predictable. By burning his own maps, the general has achieved total mobility of the spirit. He is no longer tethered to a clogged pipe of thinking. This is the twist that defies all military logic. While Hitler in Berlin is screaming about miracle weapons, the general is utilizing the ultimate secret weapon, the predator's instinct. He orders a strike, not where the enemy expects, but through the terrain they labeled as impossible, the very dead land the general just created. They think you are isolated and helpless, he whispers to his commanders. But the truth is that your isolation is your sanctuary. He is reading the hearts of his men, transforming their social proof of defeat into a private faith in their own lethality. He is visualizing the consequences of a strike that comes from a ghost army, an army that officially doesn't exist because its supply map has been turned to ash. The first shots ring out, not as a desperate defense, but as a death blow to the enemy's arrogance. The enemy is bewildered, their maps suddenly useless as they realize they are being hunted by a force they had already written off as dead. The general has successfully lanced the pimple, and the flood of his reborn army is beginning to pour through the gap. The enemy command center is in a state of total panic, a clogged toilet of conflicting reports and useless data. Their pride and arrogance have become their greatest vulnerability. As they realize their maps, the very life raft they trusted, cannot explain the ghosts attacking from the dead land. The German general stands in the freezing wind, watching the vulnerable pimple of the enemy's flank burst under the pressure of his rebirth army. He has successfully created a black hole of information, where the enemy's logic goes to die. Look at them, he says to his adjutant, his voice a calm high point amidst the roar of artillery. They are sedentary victims of their own information gap. While the enemy struggles to find a solution in their manuals, the general's men are acting with immediate urgency, driven by the pure instinct of survival. He has turned the scarcity of his resources into a predator's edge, proving that a sharpened blade of willpower is more lethal than 1,000 clogged pipes of supply trucks. This is the twist that destroys the enemy's faith in their superiority. The general is reading the eyes of the battlefield, visualizing the consequences of every strike before it happens. He is not just fighting a war, he is performing surgery on the enemy's collective psychology. He has exposed the truth that their Atlantic wall of logistics was nothing but a vessel of false hope. They are bewildered because they cannot see the fire that drives you, he whispers, reading the hearts of his frontline soldiers. He is connecting their physical exhaustion, the wrinkles of fatigue on their faces, to the sacred ground of a final, decisive effort. He is transforming their pain into a weapon of mass confusion, proving that when you discard the old maps, you rebuild the very definition of victory. The enemy's pride is now a death sentence. They are trapped in a dead land of their own making, unable to comprehend a force that operates without rules. The general has lanced the pimple, and the flood is now unstoppable. The battlefield has transformed into a dead land for the enemy's logic. Their massive formations, once a symbol of pride and arrogance, have become sedentary victims of their own weight. The German general watches through his binoculars, his expression as unreadable as Prussian steel. He sees the enemy's clogged pipes of armored columns, miles of tanks and trucks that cannot move because they are waiting for orders that no longer make sense. By burning his own maps, the general didn't just free his own men. He lanced the vulnerable pimple of the enemy's certainty, causing their entire system to bleed out in confusion. They are struggling in a world that no longer exists, he observes, his voice a calm cut through the freezing wind. He is applying the information gap as a weapon of mass destruction. The enemy is bewildered, searching for a ghost army on maps that show only dead space. The general has successfully discarded the rules of engagement, and in doing so, he has reborn the art of the strike into something invisible and lethal. This is the predator's twist. While the enemy looks for logistics, the general delivers chaos. He is reading the eyes of the battlefield through the smoke of their burning depots. He has exposed the truth that their life raft of technology was actually a black hole of dependency. He is visualizing the consequences of a giant that can no longer see its own feet. Look at their vulnerable pimple of a flank, he tells his staff, using trigger language to focus their immediate urgency. He is connecting their physical cold, the numb hands, and visible breath in the air to the fire of an inevitable breakthrough. He is transforming their exhaustion into a sacred ground of historical defiance. The enemy's pride is now their death sentence. They are trapped in a vessel of false hope, waiting for a doctor who has been cut off from the patient. The general has lanced the pimple, and the flood of his men is now creating a new map, written in the ash of the old one. The front line is no longer a border on a map. It is a sacred ground, where the general's rebirth army has successfully performed a psychological amputation on the enemy's will to fight. The enemy's pride and arrogance have been replaced by a vulnerable pimple of sheer terror as they witness the tactical twist of a ghost army rising from the dead land. The general stands among the ash of his burnt maps, his gaze calm and cold, reading the fear in the distance like a judge reading a final verdict. "Observe the result," he whispers, his voice a calm high point that cuts through the smoke of burning vessels of false hope. He has moved his men from the anatomy of despair to the predator's edge, proving that when you discard the clogged pipes of conventional thinking, you rebuild the very definition of a death blow. The enemy's life raft of logistics has turned into a black hole, swallowing their ability to react because they are still waiting for a doctor who no longer exists. This is the information gap weaponized to its ultimate conclusion. The enemy struggles to understand a victory that has no supply line. The general has successfully lanced the pimple of Hitler's miracle weapon fantasy, replacing it with the cold steel of immediate urgency and pure survival. He is visualizing the consequences of a breakthrough that destroys the rules of the old world. "Every one of you has been reborn into a savior of this moment," he tells his commanders, reading the hearts of men who have thrown away their numbing cold for the fire of defiance. He is connecting their physical transformation, the wrinkles of fatigue, turning into lines of lethality, to the myth they are creating. The enemy's death sentence is written in the chaos he has orchestrated. They are trapped in a dead land of their own certainty, while the general's army creates a new reality out of the vessel of false hope they once clung to. The general has turned the scarcity of fuel into a limitless momentum of willpower. The storm of fire finally begins to settle, and the silence that returns to the battlefield is not the silence of a clogged pipe of stagnation, but the heavy, respectful silence of a victory that destroys the rules. The German general stands at the center of the ruins, his Prussian steel gaze looking past the smoldering enemy tanks and into the dead land he has successfully claimed. He does not celebrate with pride and arrogance. He simply observes the truth he has lanced into reality. "Look at the horizon," he says to the survivors of his command, his voice a calm high point that signals the end of the black hole of dependency. "We did not win because we had more medicine or a better life raft. We won because we dared to discard the vessel of false hope and embrace the fire of survival. He is reading the hearts of his men, seeing the wrinkles of fatigue now replaced by the dignity of those who have been reborn through immediate urgency. This is the big idea that most historians miss, a tactical twist in the nature of power itself. The Panther did not lose to the Sherman, it lost to the factory. But the general did not win with supply maps. He won by burning them. He proved that in the information gap between a dictator's miracle weapon fantasy and the cold steel of reality, only professional dignity and unvarnished honesty can survive. By performing a psychological amputation on his army's reliance, he created a force that could breathe in a dead land where others suffocated. As the sun rises over the ash of the old maps, the general's legacy is not a myth of glory, but a doorway of truth for anyone trapped in their own clogged artery of fear. He has exposed the secret that certainty is a vulnerable pimple that must be lanced to find true freedom. So, I challenge you, what map are you clinging to that is actually a death sentence? Are you a sedentary victim of your own life raft? Or are you ready to discard the clogged pipes of your past and be reborn into a predator of your own future? The secret lies in the ash of your old world, waiting for you to strike the match.